Welcome to the Survivor to Thriver show with your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Do you feel stuck, silent, and stressed? Is something hurting your heart and soul? Are you burning yourself out? If so, you are in the right place because this is the podcast people from all over the world join in to learn exactly how to stop suffering and start living with inner peace and joy. Let's get started.
Hey, last episode I shared with you how I came to recognize our need for unconditional love and acceptance. Unconditional love and acceptance means that we accept every aspect of our beings, that we love and accept ourselves just as we are for who we are. And I mean every aspect of us, the good, the bad, and the ugly. See, sometimes, there are things that are present in our past experiences and our past behaviors, or there are other aspects of our being that we find ourselves struggling to like even about ourselves. And it's a very natural reaction for us that when there's something that we dislike or hate, that we want to disassociate from it, that we want to keep it away from us, that we don't want to deal with it. But when that's something that we don't like or perceive to be bad or ugly, when that is a part of us, a part of who we are, a part of our past, then how can we run away from it? You can try to ignore it and pretend like it's not there or it never happened. But ultimately, it doesn't really work. It can be an okay short-term solution, but in the long term, it just doesn't work. And the problem is that if there is such a part of you that you do not like, and that you find your own self struggling to love and accept, then how can you even begin to expect anyone else to love and accept you, or accept and love that part of you? Right? I mean, okay, so for example, if I think I am ugly, it doesn't matter how many people tell me I'm beautiful, I'm not going to be able to believe them. See, even if those people are being really, really sincere in telling me that they think I'm beautiful, and I hear that, I'm going to be like, well, they're probably lying. Or if they're not, if they're not like lying in an outright kind of way, maybe they're just being nice. They're just saying that because it's the right thing to say, the polite thing to say. Right? And I will brush it off. I will not be able to accept that compliment. I will not be able to integrate that compliment as part of my reality, right? So it's like so important, and this is like I was thinking about, oh God, so I'm in this catch-22, right? Where on the one hand, I feel so alone. I feel so isolated because, I don't feel loved and accepted, in so far as there's this part of me that no one knows about, because I've kept it hidden, I've kept it secret, I've not shared it with anyone. And until somebody knows all of me, then they don't really know me. So then they can't really love me. They can only love a part of me. And unfortunately, it turns out that somebody loving a part of me is just not enough to meet my need for love and connection. So I really need to be loved, like all of me to be loved, but I cannot be fully, completely loved if I don't share all of me with others, with the people in my life. But I'm really scared. I'm so scared to share with them this part of me that I don't like. That actually where I blame myself, I judge myself, I feel so ashamed, I feel so guilty. That I cannot share this with anyone else and expect anything good to come out of that sharing. It's like if I blame and judge myself and hate that part of my experience and my life and how it's impacting me, they're going to hate it too. They're going to blame and judge me too. I mean, that was the fear, right? And so it was like, okay, so I need to be loved and accepted for all of who I am, but can't share all of who I am because I have this fear of being judged and blamed. And wow, I mean, that's not what I need. That's only going to make me feel even worse. So it's like, how do I get out of this? How do I get out of this catch-22? And that was when I realized that, hey, the key is that I have to start with myself, with loving and accepting myself first. Before I try to have anyone else love me and accept me for who I am, I have to learn and accept myself for who I am. So it's like, okay, all right, good. The good thing about it is once you have clarity on what the problem is, then the solution naturally emerges, right? Okay, so great. So now my challenge was to learn to love and accept myself unconditionally. So how do you do that? How do you learn to love and accept yourself unconditionally? Those parts of you that you hate, that you dislike, that you're afraid of even. So in my case, it happened in a sort of kind of complex way. But you know what? So I'm going to tell you what happened in my case. But it applies to you too. Okay, it does. So we're going to tie all that back in. But let me first tell you what happened in my case. So with me, the reason I was blaming and judging myself and feeling ashamed and guilty, for the most part, all of that was related to my being a survivor of child sexual abuse. Okay, and these are really taboo subjects in our society. They're not things that people like to talk about. And when they do get talked about, like certainly in my case, the predominant messages that I heard were those of victim blaming, victim shaming. Like even in the situations, in the context where people acknowledged that a particular survivor was not to be blamed for what happened, in the sense that, she was just a victim of what happened. Because, it was like she wasn't doing anything wrong. She wasn't wearing anything wrong. She didn't say anything wrong. She was just a victim. Even in that scenario, what I heard from the people around me, including people in my family and the media, was that, wow, this girl's life is destroyed. Her honor is destroyed. And it's destroyed in a way where it's like, wow, her life. This is something that's going to stigmatize her for life. You see? And, it's like a trauma that, like, the implication was that this just destroys your entire life. There is no healing from this. There's no recovery from this. And, by the way, if it ever comes out that you are a survivor of sexual abuse, sexual assault, then not only does it shame you, the survivor, but it also shames your family and your family's honor. So, you better keep it secret. And this was when people were being kind and accepting that the survivor was just a victim and it wasn't her fault. The vast majority of time didn't even give the victim, the survivor, that much. Most of the time, the victim was just being blamed and just being shamed. It was like, what were you wearing? What were you doing? Why were you out at night? Why, at that late hour? Why were you on, why did you go alone with that man to this party or whatever it was? So what happened in my case is that I was like listening to all of these messages, and they definitely were contributing to my continued, it was like, wow, as you keep getting bombarded with these messages, makes it really, really hard to sort of, it really keeps the fear alive, right? It keeps the shame and guilt alive. And it did for me, right? But the good news for me was that there was another part of me that sort of knew that this was all very, very wrong. That felt a sense of great anger around not only what had happened to me, but a great sense of anger because, I felt that there was a great injustice about even the way that this whole issue was addressed and that people respond to this whole issue. This victim blaming and shaming. There was like a part of me that recognized that there was just something very, very wrong with that it was not just. And it made me very angry. You see? So in my case, what I sort of did, because I still wasn't, I was still trying to figure things out. in terms of how to help myself and how to heal and how to move forward. And I had very limited support, very limited guidance, because I was trying to still figure everything out on my own, right? And so it was like, okay, so basically what happened for me was that because I could no longer, it was no longer serving me, it was like getting too much to continue to focus on the shame and the guilt and all that. And I recognized that as long as I continue to feel this guilt and shame and blame and judgment for myself, that I would never be able to move ahead, never be able to heal, never be able to find the love and acceptance that I so needed and I was starting to get so desperate for. So what I did was I sort of shifted the target of all that blame and judgment and shame and guilt and anger, and the target I shifted it to primarily was my abuser. You see? So it was like, I hate my abuser. I got really, really angry towards him. And it was like, I'm not going to blame myself anymore. I'm going to blame him. I am not going to, spend another moment shaming myself or feeling guilty myself. He's the one who should feel guilty. He's the one who should feel ashamed. And so on and so forth. So I turned I changed the target of all the negativity that I'd been inflicting on myself, and I turned it all to my abuser. Now, what that basically meant was that I spent hours and hours of my life that I'd been spending before blaming and judging and hating myself. I now started spending hours and hours of my life, thinking about my abuser and hating him and wishing all kinds of horrible things to happen to him and wishing him like all kinds of suffering. Like I would imagine the worst things that I could imagine happening to any human being, and I would imagine them happening to my abuser and wishing they would happen to my abuser. And, taking this, and I found myself feeling this sense of almost pleasure in those thoughts, when I thought of him suffering. It gave me the sense of righteous pleasure. It's like, good. He deserves to suffer. He deserves to, have the worst happen to him. And it helped to the extent that, my having shifted the focus of my anger and my hate and all that onto my abuser helped to the extent that, it did make me feel better about myself to some extent. But the problem that I ran into at that point was, this idea that holding on to anger is like are drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Right? And that is exactly what I was doing, because all that anger that I was now building up and fostering within me, it was like it really was poisoning me. It really was. So it's like, again, it can be a good short-term strategy, and it was helpful to the extent that it was helpful in, making me feel better about myself. But ultimately, it's not an effective long-term strategy to hold on to anger and hate and all those kinds of negative emotions, even if they're being directed towards someone else. Because they are just these emotions, these negative energies, they're harmful for you regardless if you're holding on to them. They're harmful to you regardless of who the target of them is or who the subject of them is. So I started to then have other kinds of challenges and issues, But at least I'd moved a little bit ahead and I'd made a little bit of progress in terms of starting to get to a place of greater self-love and greater self-acceptance. So not the ideal solution, but a first step that I took. And it was the best step that I could have taken at that time with what I knew and what I had. Okay, so the lesson in here is, and look, next episode, I will tell you about a much better solution for helping you. If you find yourself struggling with this yourself, I will tell you a much better solution than the one that I implemented for me, because hey, now I know better, so I can share that better solution with you. But in the meanwhile, the lesson that I want you to kind of take from this, what I've shared with you right now, is just to recognize this idea that holding on to anger, holding on to hatred, holding on to attitudes of blame and judgment, they're just unhealthy ways of being, regardless of who the subject of them is, whether it's you or someone else. So ultimately, the better solution that we're going to talk about next time, ultimately it has to do with our being able to let go of these negative energies, these negative attitudes and ways of thinking, like pretty much entirely, and replacing them with better ones that have more positive and healing energy. All right? So you may want to take the time between today, right now, and when we connect next time to identify some areas in your life where you may be holding on to these kinds of negative energies, so that when we start to talk about the better solutions, you have some area, some specific issue in mind that you can apply those teachings to. And you'll find that if you have that specific idea in mind that you can apply the teachings to, you will benefit so much more from being tuned in to that learning. All right. So let me just go ahead and end with the quick reminder that, hey, if you find yourself struggling with this, please do not continue to struggle with it on your own. Reach out for help and support. And I am one person that you can reach out to help and support too, if you need it. Right? And you know how to connect with me. Just go to my website at www.academyofthriving.com. Click on the Contact Us page, and you'll see various options for how you can connect with me. So until we connect next time, I wish you lots of peace and joy.